Let us begin. The Mishnah says, you see it? Stuff which is normally measured in a small measure. And halacha is if you measure small measures, that's essentially retail. So then the seller is chayav to be mafresh the Trumas U'Maasot of Demai. If you sell in large measures, that's called gasa. That's essentially wholesale. And then we say the buyer is mechuyev to be mafresh the what?
The profit margin.
The profit margin is lower, and therefore the buyer has to take off the Demai. So somebody normally sells retail. Mother Bagasi sold this once wholesale to Fela Dako Lagasa. So his normal practice of Daka is superseded by his current practice of Gasa, and now that he's selling wholesale, he doesn't have to take off the Demai, rather the buyer has to take off Demai. And vice versa. Veshadarko Limdo Bagasa, somebody who normally sells for wholesale, and now he sold for retail, Mododo Badaka, Fela Gasa Dako. So now his normal practice of selling wholesale is canceled, and we go by his current retail retail practice on the spot.
That sounds like, remember, a korban onlo yori, if he changes his status.
If he changes status, right? It's a similar idea, but here it's really talking about how he sells it, not his balance sheet, right? He might be rich or poor either way. What I'm talking about is how he said the mode of sale. Ezumida Gasa, what's considered to be a large measure, i.e. tantamount to wholesale. Biyavish Shlosha Kavim, when you sell in dry measure 3 kav, uvelach, or in moist measure, dinar, the value of a dinar or above these measures. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Salei Te'enim, Salei Anovim, baskets of figs and baskets of grapes, Bekupos Shel Yerek, and baskets of vegetables, Kozman Shumochan Askara, as long as he sells them by estimate. Askara is estimate, and not by exact weight. Potter is exempt from the Demai, because that's considered to be a wholesale way of doing things, selling it by estimate, not by exact weight. Okay, just that. Gemara. Al daiti da'aitano. From this time, we have an interesting thing. It's really the Yerushalmi is commenting on the interest in our Mishnah, an interesting point. Nasu shir liyavish, he gives a measure for what's considered to be the cutoff point by dry measures, which is shlosha kavin. Lo nasu shir balach, he doesn't give a measure for moist measures, right? By moist measures, he just gives a sum, a dinar, right? He doesn't talk about measures. Nasu dami lulach, and vice versa, they gave a sum for what's considered to be a wholesale versus retail by moist measure, by wet measure. Lo nasudam liyavish, and they didn't give a sum, they didn't give a monetary value, but rather a value in measures when dealing with yavish and dealing with dry measure. Tani Rabbi Chia, we learned Rabbi Chia taught us. Hin mida gasa. Now, Rabbi Chia did the exact opposite. He's going to give us a measurement when it comes to liquid measures, and a value when it comes to solid measures. Okay, so how does Rabbi Chia do that? It says hin, which is a liquid measure, that above that, anything above that is mida gasa, is a wholesale measure. Anything below hin is mida daka, is a retail measure. Toman, mida toman, which is a coin, certain coin, I don't know how much it's worth, but a toman is a mida daka. That's considered to be, that and less is considered to be retail. You sell for a greater amount of money, in other words, greater sums, which go, greater measures, which go for greater sums, obviously. Mida gas is considered to be a large measure. Al daiti do'odin tanya. According to this brisa, we find the exact opposite phenomena that we found in the Mishnah. Nasu shir lalach, they gave a specific measure for wet measure. Lo nasu shir liyavish, they didn't give any measures for dry measures. Nasu damin liyavish, and vice versa, we gave a value for dry measure. Lo nasu damin liyavish, we didn't give a value for wet measure. Rabbi Shimon ben Yotzadok said, you should know. This is a new issue. I should really put a dot there. Rabbi Shimon ben Yotzadok says, you should know a new issue. He doesn't say you should know a new issue. This is a new issue, and he tells us what we should know. Tanai Beistinu. it says Tuf Nun Yud Yud, but it's the same thing like Tuf Nun Aleph Yud. T'nai Basin, it's a condition that Basin has made. Sheteheto Remes Trumas Meiser Misham Mocher, that where a seller has to take the Trumas Meiser in cases of Demai, who Meiser Sheni Mishal Lokech, whereas the buyer has to take the Meiser Sheni. So ask Gemara, when Rabbi Yochanan said the special name Rabbi Shimon ben Yotzadok, Man and Kayamed, what case are we discussing? Imamida Dako, we're talking about moist measure, talking about retail, Ova Mocher Mistaker. It says, since the seller makes the profit, right, since he makes a greater profit margin, so therefore Mocher Mafresh, the seller's got to even take off Meiser Sheni. So we're talking about a large measure, wholesale. So we learned the opposite of lokech mistaker, since the buyer gets the advantage. Halokech marpish, the lokech takes off. Even we would assume the trumas meiser. Rabbi Bun Barchi. So two answers. Rabbi Bun Barchi gave an answer. Tipot to resolve it. Bo'omer lo miknaso, where he says, "I'm selling this to you from my stockpile." In other words, he's not from his own produce. Where do we say that the mocher and lokeach have those rules of demai which we were talking about previously? When it's demai. When the seller says, I'm not sure what this is, I'm not sure if it's tight or not, and the buyer says he's not sure. But in the case of the buyer says, this is my vadai, this is definitely I grew this produce in my backyard. It's not demai. So in that case, the Tanai based in, the way he understands it, Rabbi Bun Bar Chia, is that if I, as seller, am selling vadai, I take off the Trumas Meiser, but you take off the Meiser Sheni. Okay? So it's about Vada, my produce in my backyard. Rabbi Yisrael said, no, Afilu Temer Shalom make Mechneso. He didn't even tell you about it's not talking about from his own stockpile, his own backyard. It's this is the resolution. Ba'aymer, when he says B'daito Nitkan, it's he says that to the buyer that he should take it off. I'm not sure who says to whom. Yeah, the Stipler's son says you tell the buyer that the buyer has to take off the Trumas and Meisers. You tell him, listen, Rabbi Yid, I'm selling you to Demai. You take off the Trumas and Meisers. I didn't take off anything. So in that case, I say, Afal Pichein, despite the fact that we tell the buyer caveat emptor, could be where you make sure that take off the Trumas and Meisers to Demai. Afal Pichein Amrulo, nonetheless, they said concerning this, Tanai based in who? It's a Tanai based in Shu Yehedei Trumas Meiser Mishal Mocher, that the seller has got to take a Trumas Meiser. The only thing he can relieve on Lokeach's shoulders, or Meiser Sheni Mishal Lokeach should take off the Meiser Sheni.
What the Mocher is in Amoritz.
No, we're talking about Mocher Chavar. You're right. Mocher Amoritz, all bets are off. Obviously, we're talking about a Mocher who knows what to do. Rabbi Elazar, B'Shem Rabbi Yeshua, said a similar idea in a different area of halacha. Tanai based in it's a Tanai based in Hachelim Mishal Tabach. When a butcher weighs out the meat, so he takes upon himself the value of the fats, was the forbidden fats, the chelev, right? Because he said even though he can't use them, right? So the buyer can't use them nonetheless. So the butcher shouldn't have to suffer such shouldn't have a diminished profit margin. So therefore he's allowed to include in the weight the forbidden fats and let the buyer get rid of the forbidden fats himself. On the other hand, the Gid HaNoshe Mishal Lokeach, the Gid HaNoshe was the responsibility of the opposite. The mocher has to take him out of the responsibility of the chelev. He loses the chelev. He loses because of the chelev. The buyer, it loses because of the Gid HaNoshe. In other words, when the mocher weighs the meat for lokeach, he's not allowed to include the forbidden fats, but he is allowed to include the Gid HaNoshe in the weight. Okay? So the mocher loses in which case? the chaylev, because he's not allowed to include it in the weight. Which case does he gain? Kiddush, because he's allowed to include it in the weight. So that was the original conduct. Rabbi Avo Kisarin, however, Rabbi Avo made the custom in Caesarea Shushnei Mishalokech, that the buyer should accept upon himself the loss even of the chaylev.
So that means that the buyer is obligated to take out, to traber the Kiddush?
He has to pay for the trabering. He has to pay for the trabering. In other words, he has to pay for the weight of the meat before the trabering. When essence means he's paying for the trabering. Why does he have to pay that? Begin the Yahavun, and it should be madkin, purify, tavus properly. In other words, if the mocher has to accept upon himself the losses for the chaylev, so he's going to be he's not going to do the trabering properly. He's not going to do the chaylev properly, right? Because he loses money for the chaylev, right? So this way, we say, you know what, Rabbi Avo, recognizing, being pragmatic, and recognizing the butchers are suspect. So what he did is he says, I'll tell you what, from now on, the buyers will take upon themselves the loss of the chaylev. You just traber it properly.
Except the chaylev is going to weigh more than the Kiddush.
Right.
But it's going to be more expensive to trade with the Kiddush than it would be to trade with the...
Of course.
That's how
But anyway, he was paying for the Kiddush previously. The buyer was always paying for the Kiddush, right? Now he's also paying for the chaylev. That's part of that corner. Because it's also trading on the chaylev. He has to make sure the tabach to take off all the chaylev. So in order to take away from him the possibility of deception and fraud, we said the buyer will pay you for the loss you have from having to trade out the chaylev. Okay? Hajar al chaylut dvarim. Perek shlishi. Ma'achim esaniyim d'mai. V'esachsaniyim d'mai. That's a very interesting halacha. And the Mishnah says you can get, since d'mai, again, it's only takana de rabbanon, therefore poor people, if you have poor people, you have to give them d'mai. V'esachsaniyim d'mai. And you have wayfarers, you're allowed to give them d'mai. And Gamliel will give his workers who are poor to mine. Gabet tzedakah. What about a gabet tzedakah? A person who's in charge of giving tzedakah. Beishamrim nosnim esam musar l'sheina musar. So gabet tzedakah should give that which is meiser already to those who are suspect not to take meisers. Ve'sheina musar, that which is not meiser already, then he should give l'meiser to a poor person who does meiser, because then he'll take off meiser from it. So everybody will come out eating proper foods. Chachomim say we're not makbid on this. We collect the money for tzedakah without determining whether it was demai or not. We divvy it out without determining whether it's demai or not. But somebody wants to fix it up, Yisakin, that's his business. Now, there's a very important machlokes between the Bavli and Yerushalmi here. The Bavli holds that the ani is allowed to eat demai. The ani, the poor person who gets the demai, can eat it as demai. The Yerushalmi holds he cannot. The Yerushalmi holds it's a kula on the giver, that the giver may give demai, but can the recipient take the demai and eat it? No.
What's he going to do with it? Sell it?
He'll have to tight it before he eats it. He can't just take the demai and eat it. He's going to have to take trumas and meisus off of it. Okay? Understood? The Gemara is going to flow from that perspective of Yerushalmi, which is, again, the ani has got to take off the meisers. Okay? Let's see how it flows.
So that's similar to what we had with Peah, right?
Well, how so?
Well, the ani, were they required to take?
No, they're exempt. Peah is exempt from trumas and meisers.
Maybe it was Lekit. No, it was
They're all
all
exempt.
three.
They're all exempt. They're all exempt.
It's different then.
It's different, yeah. So here, immediately the Gemara this manifests itself to the spirits. Rabbi Yerushalmi said, "Mastisim bani chaverim." Our mission is talking about where the poor people are knowledgeable, are chaverim, are part of this, our society of shomrei trumas u'maisos, and therefore when we give them the demai, we don't suspect that they're not going to take trumas u'maisos off of it. Uvachsanya, What about an Achsani? We talk about wayfarers. Are you allowed to give Achsanios Demai? How does that work? So Tani Mama, Rabbi Yeshua, it's like Rabbi Yeshua. What Rabbi Yeshua? What's the case of Rabbi Yeshua? Tani, we learned my Brisa, Maisa Rabbi Yeshua is the episode which occurs with Rabbi Yeshua. Sholach Rabbi Yochanan Zakei, Far Rabbi Yochanan Zakei to Lebror Chayil. Vayos Menei Ariyoros Mevilam Peros, and the people in the surrounding cities who were Amaratim brought them fruit. So the fruit was Demai. Arman Rabbi Yeshua said, Im Lonu Kan, so Rabbi Yeshua said concerning this situation, if we stay here overnight, then we have to take Meiser off this Demai. And if we don't stay overnight, so we don't have to take Meiser off this Demai. What would be the difference? Can you figure out what the difference would be if they stayed there overnight or not? If they stay overnight, they have to take off the Demai. They would. If they stayed overnight. If they don't stay overnight, they don't have to take it off. What would be the difference? Whether it's Achilas Arai or Achilas Keva. In other words, if they stay overnight, then they're already koveah themselves in that place. They make themselves semi-permanent in that place. So therefore, the food is nikba l'maisers, right? It must be meiser at that point. Or if they don't stay overnight, it remains achilas arai. Lochas b'achilas arai, even if tevel vada, you don't have to take off trumas l'maisers yet, unless it's in the goran or whatever. You made were koveah l'maisers. So here too wouldn't be considered kavua l'maiser. It's not considered to be fixed and requiring maiser until you actually stay there overnight. Okay, but again, according to Yerushalmi, both situations, both by the poor people and the Achsania, really the recipient has to take off the mai. It's not like the bavli. It's not like that both are exempt, both are given the recipient. The recipient is chayav. That's going to great length to figure out what case a recipient would not be chayiv. In the Reisha, which case the giver is allowed to give the recipient and not have to worry that the recipient won't do it. In the Reisha, it's an oni chaver, a poor person who we trust to take off trumas and maisus. And the same side about Achsani, who's not even staying overnight. So he's so temporary, he's not chayiv trumas and maisus for achilas arai. Says the Gemara further, Rabbi Yossi Amar, Rabbi Yossi argues. It says, Bani Amoratim Masniso. He says, our mission is really talking about Aniyim of Amoratim. We're not going to take off Trubas and Maisrus. Im Omar at Bani Chaverim, because if you would only say that people who are Aniyim Chaverim can come and get Mai, so Nimtseisa Noel Delis Bifnei Ameoret. So then all the Amoratim who come to town won't get any grain. Why would they get any grain? No, because we won't give the Amoratim because we're afraid they won't take off Maisrus. So therefore, we're going to have to give it. We're going to give it all to the Talmidei Chachamim, the Chaverim. So therefore, in order to prevent that situation, we say, according to Rabbi Yossi, you can even give the Aniyim Amoretz to mine, which is like the Bavli, right? That even Aniyim are exempt.
Why would you not want to give it? What they do is up to them. So it's not an ara for you to make
it's not. It's Mitzayed over Avera. You're aiding and abetting. It's not classic Livnei Iver, but it's on the scale of Livnei Iver. Yeah, that's the problem. Okay, Ma'amakam Rabbi Yossi la'achsanya. How does Rabbi Yossi learn that case of achsanya? In other words, if Rabbi Yossi is saying that in fact it's even an Amoretz, so how does he learn the case of achsanya? That there you can't give an achsanya Amoretz because of nilas deles, because the door might be locked in their face. Because it's we're not talking about poor people by achsanya. We're talking about wayfarers. So it'll be a different case. Rabbi Yossi says you have to give aniyah Amoretz so the door won't be locked in their face. So you can even give them to my. But achsanyas are not poor people. Sometimes they're quite rich. What justification would there be by achsanya to give it to an Amoretz? What's the problem? I'm not sure I'm getting through to you guys. No. By aniyim Amoratim, they understand Rabbi Yossi as a svara. He says you have to give aniyim Amoratim. My otherwise nobody's ever going to give them aniyim sustenance. But an achsanya is not an oni. An achsanya is not anybody who's traveling. So there, what heter is there to give an achsanya who's an amoritz? Like the previous Gemara, we gave the achsanya. Why? Because they were not kavua. They weren't staying overnight. They were just temporary. But but even then, we were specifically giving Talmidei Chachamim, Rabbi Yoshua. We knew in Meiser if you were staying overnight. Who are we giving here? Who's the achsanya we're giving according to Rabbi Yossi? Who could we possibly be giving if they're Amaratzim? This stuff, this Demai to eat, maybe they're not going to Meiser properly, right? Then there's no Svarim Shlotino Delis because they're not poor people. So it says more Rabbi Lazar Mezu achsanya shalakum. Fascinating halacha. He says you might have thought you're not even allowed to give Demai to a goy. Why is that? Why would you not be allowed to give Demai to a goy? No, that would be a good reason. That would be what I would say first too, but it's not. There's a more lumdisher reason. And the one is going to get into this in little detail. Because it's nimtza pareach chover b'dover aser. You're not allowed to pay up something with something which is prohibited. For several reasons. In this case, because you're stealing, Trumas Meiser, and you're stealing all the Kohanim. You're not being Mekayim to Takoras Chachamim, and you're giving them something which is not completely yours. So there are a bunch of problems with this. But generally speaking, you're not allowed to give something which is also to you in payment for your loan. Okay? So I think it's also give them even Demai. A mashmalah that you're allowed to give them Demai. Right? That's what it says here. Tani, we learned Tzarech Lodia. Okay? I'm sorry, I skipped. I skipped. Ma'amakar Rabbi Yosef Sanya Kadod the Tani, like it says, Hagoyim Rachem, the Goyim were living with you, the Gertoishavs. The Rabbi Sanya, you give them to Yirach Sanya. Rabbi Lazar Omer Zuach Sanya Shalachum. This is talking about the by Goyim, even you can give them Achsanya as well. Okay? Period.
Which is why even today, in that Yisrael, you have to burn, you have to dispose of the gift.
That's right.
You can't give it.
Can't just give it to anybody, right? Only Demai you could do it, but not by Fadai. Tani, we learned Tzarech you have to tell the guy who's getting the stuff from you, the poor person, that it's Demai. I'll die to Rabbi Yoina, according to Rabbi Yoina, who said, Do Amar Baniyim B'Chaverim, who must be said with our Mishnah about Aniyim or Chaverim, Nicha. I understand where you're telling them because they'll take off. Right? They're Chaverim, we'll tell them it's Demai, they'll take off. I'll die to Rabbi Yossi, Do Amar Baniyim Amartim Masnisa. Even but according to Rabbi Yossi says our Mishnah talking about Aniyim Amoretz, Hafilu Modian, if you tell them Ma'u Moil. What goes to do? The Amaratz is not going to do anything with the information anyway. They're just going to eat it. There's a more interesting answer. Echad, and it should be Shehu Misakin. Because one person somewhere will be Misakin it. Some Amoretz. He'll know. Maybe it's so this will do tshuva and take off meisters. Okay? Rabbi Yonah, Rabbi Mona. Rabbi Mona said, the disciple of some brings that Rabbi Mona was Rabbi Yonah's son. So Ramona said that according to Rabbi Yonah, who says that when you're Modia, you give an ani who's a chaver Demai, not vadai, but you give him Demai. Hadamara, this teaches us, Elaine diyavim bevesin, those who are giving in their house, aser lite midmei shvius. You're not allowed to give them shvius money. Now this means if an ani comes to your door and he says, I want some food, or money, if it's pay the May Shvius, but let's say food. You're not allowed to give him pay or Shvius. Why? Because where do we say you're allowed to give an ani stuff only by Demai and only if you're Modia him? But by Shvius, that's like Tevo Vadai. You can't be Porea your Chov. You can't fulfill obligations with Vadai. You can't fulfill obligations with Shemitah fruit. Okay? This is forbidden fruit, so to speak. You can't give it to him. Why is that? Because it's like doing mischar. You're not allowed to do mischar. You're not allowed to do trade with shvius. Giving stock is like doing trade. It's forbidden. You can't give prepared shvius as tzedakah. The only time is tevel vada is the same thing. You're not allowed to sell tevel normally. You can't give it to an ani tzedakah. The one exception is demai to an ani chaver. when you tell him, okay, that's Rabbi Yona's parameters.
Shvis wouldn't be hefker anyway, so it wouldn't be the man's 12 ices anyway, right?
You're still not allowed to be used to buy and sell it. Even the hefker stuff you're not allowed to buy and sell. You're not allowed to do any business with it. Nowadays, so they make elaborate ruses in order to get around that problem.
No, I mean giving it to the yoni. It's not yours to give anyway.
Yeah, but you're being kind of mitzvah tzedakah with it. You're not allowed to do that. That's like Porei Chova with Peir Shvis. That's a chiddush, okay? Not even allowed to be kind of mitzvah tzedakah with it. Okay? Says the Gemara again. Also, it's as if you're paying back your loan from Shemitah fruit, right? Because it's the obligation of stock you've been filling with Shemitah fruit. The Tani, like that which we learned in a Brayso, Echad Shvis. I'm not sure if it's Brayso or Mishnah. One concern of using the Shas is that there's no Maseres of Shas, so I don't know if it's a Brayso or a Mishnah. Called the Tani, but it says in some statement of Tanoim, Echad Shvis ve'Echad Meiser Sheni, both Shvis and Meiser Sheni, Ein Nifloim and Malve v'Chayv. You can't use them to pay off a debt, a loan. Ve'Noisim Em Shvinas. If a Shadchan made you a shidduch, you can't give it to them. Right? Shvinas is not exactly a shidduch. It means it's a wedding gift. But wedding gifts in the old days were obligatory. Nowadays they're also obligatory, but we're cheapskates. But in the old days they were mamish obligatory. Since they were really obligatory, if you gave it from Peir Shvis, you'd be fulfilling an obligation to Shemitah fruit. It's not good. You're not allowed to do that. You can't pay any fines with them. You can't give tzedakah to aniyim in shul from fruits of Meiser Sheni and Shemitah. Again, it's like Porei Chova. Avo, what can you do? You can give it to him as a chesed. Not as tzedakah, because that's a chiyuv. But as chesed, you can give it to him. And you have to tell them that it's mine. Or Shemitah, or whatever it is. Tamot, we learned over there. Poel. Not if you're Modia, then.
You gotta tell him that.
Yeah. I don't know if you're Modia because of that. You're Modia, so you should know what it is. But you save yourself the product and Nevastas in that case as well, right? Tamot, we learned over there. Poel she'eino ma'amin l'Baal Bayis. Yeah, a pro who doesn't believe the Baal Bayis, he has to take off his own Demai, his own Trumas and Meitzers. Now, Tamon, don't be fooled. Tamon means here, even though it really means there. But it means what we immediately quoted. That's Yerushalmi. Okay? Even though Tamon, the first time he said Tamon, it meant over there. This Tamon means over here. Because vis-a-vis what we originally quoted, now I'm obfuscating. Let me try and make this simple. Tamon means here, because what we just quoted now became here, and therefore our Mishnah now became there. Okay? So Tamon, meaning in our Mishnah, which vis-a-vis what we just quoted is over there, right? In our Mishnah, we Atomer Po Mafrish. You say the Poel's got to take off himself. Right? It says that notes the Polim Demai. You give the Polim Demai in our Mishnah. That's what it says. You can pay off your workers with Demai. Yet over there, Ka, meaning here, but meaning there, Atomer Baal Bayis Marpish. You say the Baal Bayis. You want to come in?
I'm sorry, I have to.
There's no question.
It seems that I took things out and I thought I brought exactly.
Ooh, we're gonna flog you.
You'll have to come out the room for that.
Okay. All right. Teischem l'sholem and Nesiya Torah. Okay. Yeah, he's from Hebron. His wife's from Hebron. I don't know if it's Hebron or Kiryat Arba. I'm not sure which one. No, it's probably Hebron. So he's going in the middle of the Palestinian territory. Okay. By us, you're saying the pearl takes off. Yet over there, you say the Baal Bais is supposed to take off. The only time you take off is if the Baal Bais is not believed by you. So it's a contradiction. Who's going to take off the Demai? Is it you or the Baal Bas? Rabbi Yerushalmi said, very interesting dichotomy. Tamon b'machilon mina menduyim. By us, it's talking about a case where over there, it's talking about a case where you're feeding him from the members of your household. Menduyim means from the invitees. You invited him to your table. You invite him to your table, so it's like, oh no, the opposite. I apologize. Here, Tamon is again, it's consistent. Tamon is over there. Tamon, you're what? Yeah, meaning our Mishnah. In our Mishnah. Tamon, over there, both in the line before.
In that case, the Pole's mafresh in that case.
Yeah. I'll tell you why in a minute. But Tamon, this over there is saying like the over there before, which means by us. By us, the Pole's mafresh looks kakamemi, but it works out in logic. The Pole has to be mafresh because the Baal Bais is not Porei Chova. It doesn't look like he's providing the food as part of the shiur. Looks like he's providing the food as magnanimous gestures, inviting him to the table. That's why who's got to take off the Trumas of Maasros? The worker. However, Bilam Hacha, but over here, meaning over there, the Baal Bas takes it off. Why? Because it's Machilu min Avus. He's feeding him from a trough. Now, not literally, but meaning he's paying. It's as if he's mechuyev to give him the food. Right, it's one of the benefits. So there, it's like Perez Chovo. It's part of the wages. So it's a part of the wages. The halach is now to be Perez Chov from the mais. So in that case, you have to take off the maasros. The Baal Bas takes maasros. So it works in logic. It sounds preposterous, but it works, right?
The other thing is, if you take it one step further, then it implies that you invite anybody to your meal.
Yeah.
Asking the people who are invited to sit down with you
they have to be mafresh mai, except we're only according to bear in mind we're talking about here aniyim specifically. So normally, if you invite people to your table, you have to take off the demai before you feed them. This is a unique situation. This is where the Paulim are considered to be the Paulim are aniyim, and you tell them, Rabbi, I'm giving you demai to eat. You guys have to take it off. Okay? If you invite someone to your house, that situation doesn't apply. Okay? We mentioned before you came in, I think, it's Machlokas Bavli and Yerushalmi. The Bavli says, when they're aniyim, they themselves are allowed to eat the demai as demai. Yeah, the Yerushalmi holds you got to make they're not allowed to, at least Rabbi Yoina. It's Machlokes Rabbi Yoina and Rabbi Yossi. But Rabbi Yoina holds they're not allowed to eat the demai as demai. You have to get them to take it off. It's just that you're not mukhiyat to take it off. Okay? Rabbi Zrika and Shimon Barva both said B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yochanan. Similar idea, related, but not quite the same. Rofi Chaver, a doctor, was a Chaver. Shamachil Chayla Amoretz was giving food for medicinal reasons to Chaylas and Amoretz. No say toch yado, you can't put it into his hand, no say toch beef, not to his mouth. What are you talking about? B'Tmai. By Tmai, so they weren't mechayiv the doctor to take off Trumas and Maasros, because that's cutting into his profit margin, right? So but he still can't put it into his mouth, only into his hand. Not directly. He can't stuff the mai down his throat. That ain't not allowed to do. That's by the mai. But if it's vadai, I feel toch yodo also. You're not allowed to put it even in his hand. Why? Because what are you transgressing? Lifnei iver lo titei milcho. Put your stomach block in it. Mishal choyle. And that's all talking about the doctor stuff himself. The chola stuff himself. But if it's the doctor's stuff, the doctor's food, then he says it's also even by the mai. So it must be because of profit margins before. Because it says here, that if it's that's all I'll tell you about the chola stuff. So anyway, it doesn't make a difference in profit margins. By the doctor stuff, because by doing the doctor himself is bringing the food from the house, regardless, it's also to put the mai even into his hand. So I guess the kula is based on expedience. In other words, when it's the chola is the mai, so you the rofi are not mechuyev to interfere in his affairs to that extent. You can just allow him to eat his own demai, but you can't put it in his mouth. When it's tevel vada, you can't even put it in his hand. You have to interfere. You have to be marfish and surah. You can't allow him to transgress an outright Torah prohibition. When it's from your own house, and you're bringing him the food to eat, there you have to be marfish even on demai to give to him. Unless he's an oni, I guess. But be that as it may, perhaps you can charge him. Maybe you can charge him for that. But you have to, if you brought your own food along, you have to take off the demai from it. If it's Ever Min Achai, Afilu Mishachol. I skipped. Sorry. This is all Yisrael. But by Goy, Afilu Bevadei Mutter. Even if it's vadai, you're allowed to give it to him, of course, because the goy is not also in tevel. Misho rofe also, but if it's the doctor's vadai, he's not allowed to give it to the chola, because he's going to charge the chola for it. So he's pareach chovo with he's being pareach chovo. He's fulfilling his obligation with vadai, and that's prohibited, even vis-a-vis a goy. Okay, that's good. It works out. Avo ben Noach. But if it's that's all Yisrael. Avo ben Noach. I skipped. I went backward. But if it's Ever Min Achai, I feel Michel Choyla also. You're not allowed to give it to even to the goy, even if it's his own Ever Min Achai. Why again? Leave the Iver Shlo Yavli De Takolin or the Shukah Gestonbach, because of course Ever Min Achai is also for a goy as well. Okay. Unless the guy is a chol sheish b'sakana, right? You give it to him on the spot. Now, going to the next part of our, going on to a new issue. V'kasha al Beis Shammai. It's difficult on Beis Shammai. Begin to just a second.
Okay. This has gotten okay.
Yeah, the kasha Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai in our Mishnah said that you give, if you have demai, so you give it if you give it to the chaver, to an ani who's not a chaver, you have to take off the trumas and maisus. If you give it to an ani who's a chaver, you rely that he's going to take off trumas and maisus. So it says the Gemara, B'kasha Beis Shammai, begin to kosher yafsid, because the ani is a chaver, so he's got to lose, right? Because he's going to have to take off the tights himself, so he ends up getting less. It's not fair. Says the Gemara, no salokitei tikuna. You have to add on to the stock you give him. You have to add on the amount it takes to be masaki in the demai, right? Matan de Beis Shammai. Now, the question of the Gemara is a little bit vague. The disciple son explains in greater detail. He says, Beis Shammai in the ratio concedes by an ani over mimokum l'mokum. He doesn't say that you have to make sure that he doesn't get the mai. Achsanya, assuming that it's anim. Beis Shammai didn't argue in that case. It just says machlis anim demai v'sachsanya demai. Nothing about that. Nothing about Beis Shammai arguing. Beis Shammai only argues in the Sefer, right? When it talks about gabet stocker, the gabet stocker's got to make sure nobody gets the mai. What's the issue in the ratio and the Sefer? Now, says the Gemara, what's the difference? Amazing difference, the Gemara says. This is practically shocking. I would say it's absolutely shocking, so we're going to have to say even more shocking later. So, says Beis Shammai, Mata Beis Shammai, why didn't Beis Shammai argue in the ratio? So says the Gemara, I feel, you know why? Because the ratio talking about an audience going from place. Excuse me. It's going from city to city. I feel so you'll be from with him today, and he'll take mices off the demai. What will happen tomorrow? You'll Can you fix them tomorrow? Ain't not the Yochol. You can't fix them every day. In other words, it's like a drop in the bucket. So I'm going to stop her transgressing this one today, so tomorrow go to another city, he'll transgress this. It's for sure.
So it's one
It
less.
certainly goes against our values, yeah.
It's one less.
One less is right?
Yes.
And Shami didn't have that
Maybe he'll
perspective.
learn from that lesson, and he won't do it the next time.
What?
Maybe he'll learn from the one incident, so he won't do it the next time.
I guess maybe if you were Beis Hillel, you'd say that, but Beis Shammai doesn't know that way. The truth is, everybody agrees in the racial taka. By Noni over and Mokum, you definitely don't know take off time. So in the Sefer, that Beis Hillel argues, Beis Shammai says that by a local one, you also don't take off Tamai. But the truth is, Beis Shammai's svara seems to be not outlandish. Nobody knocks it out of the ballpark, and it's a very amazing svara. It's again, what it's saying is that, okay, we'll fix it up today, but tomorrow who's going to transgress again? Now, I don't think, just to take away the brunt of this, I don't think Beis Shammai would have said this by Devil Vadai, right? It's only by Tamai he says this. He says this is a minor issue to Rabbana. He's going to transgress it anyway tomorrow. So what's the difference? That's what we're really saying here. Okay? If it was Tevel Vada, I don't think even Beis Shammai would have said this. Am I making myself clear? If Tevel Vada, we're not going to give the honey to Tevel to eat. But still, it is still a big chiddush, a relatively big chiddush. Ma'atad Rabbana, what's the logic of Rabbana about Gabait Tzedakah? That a Gabait, they don't hold the Gabait Tzedakah to make sure that Taniyim get stuff which is Mesukan. Why is that? Because if you're going to make sure that the Gabait Tzedakah gives properly, so that everybody eats Mesukan, so a person is going to give less tzedakah. In other words, what it means is that what it means according to the Stipler's wait a second. What it means according to the Stipler's son is that then you're going to have to find out who's giving the mine, who's giving vadai. The Gabait Tzedakah is going to have to start being medaktek. Who does rely on, who not rely on, and then is people going to say, "Oh, you don't trust my hechsher? I'm not going to give tzedakah anymore." So if you start making the Gabait Tzedakah be medaktek, who should get the mine, who shouldn't get the mine, he's going to have to be medaktek who's giving the mine, who's not giving the mine. That's what causes all sorts of rifts in the community. So therefore, we just accept it uniformly and distribute it uniformly without regard to what's the mine, what's vada. Okay, what's the mine, what's not. Okay? Says the Gemara, what's a little bit of a tangent. Gabait Tzedakah b'yontif, a Gabait Tzedakah on yontif. Lo yimachris there's machris b'kol. They can collect the food. They can carry. They can cook. Right? They're allowed to malach on yontif. So therefore they can collect food on yontif for distribution. However, when they collect the food, they should do it different than they do in the week. Lo yimachris there's machris b'kol shouldn't announce that they're coming around like doing weekdays. Avogomit they collect in private, in not private, but in an inconspicuous way. And they can put it into their pockets, in which they hide it. They don't do it outright again because it's like a chilul yontif. And they give to each neighbor by itself. They don't bring to any central locations. Again, not to diminish the atmosphere of yontif. Okay. Gabay Tekupa bid Shvius. Now, here, very interesting halacha, similar to one we just had. A Gabay, if they're collecting food in Shemitah, so then, Lo Yimadaktikim Mechatzer Shaloch Shvius. They shouldn't check out, this is Yankel's yard, and he eats Shemitah. I gotta stay away from him. They shouldn't look, they shouldn't check into that. I guess a contemporary analogy would be, that's the house of Yankel, he relies on the Heter Mechira, during Shemitah. Something like that. They shouldn't be makbid on things like that. A similar idea to what we said previously, because then people are not going to want to give. Nosin land pas mutter. Rather, if if they gave them bread, they're allowed to take it regardless of where they get it from. Why? Very strange thing. I don't know what this comes from, but Jews only have Shemitah money or Shemitah eggs. Now I know you'll say eggs are not Shemitah, right? Because they come from chickens, not from the ground. But Jews don't leave bread of Shemitah around. They make sure, and they don't give that to tzedakah. The only thing Jews have of Shemitah is money, because they sold pair Shemitah, now they have money, or they bought eggs with that money. Something which is not actual vegetable or plant, right? So that the Gabbai tzedakah shouldn't take eggs and shouldn't take money, but food he can take, because the Jews are not chashuv to give food of Shemitah to tzedakah. They're not even chashuv to keep it around. They get rid of it as soon as possible. They think that eggs are not a problem, even though they bought them with Shemitah money, so that they keep around. But they're not going to keep around vegetables of Shemitah. Okay, is that clear? So you don't have to worry about that. Says the so it's not really analogous to the Heter Mechira. Really is not a same type of case. Rabbi Chanina b'Shem Pinchas said, "Hod the Tamar." That what you said is true. That you can say, but Mokum Shazorim V'Lo'ochlin, in a place where they plant during Shemitah, but they don't eat Shemitah fruit. Lecho Ein Chashudim. They're not, so they don't eat themselves. Koshkein la'achil, they're certainly not going to give to others Shemitah fruit, and we can go indiscriminately and collect from them food for tzedakah. Now, Kohanim HaMegavli B'Taharu. Kohanim will go and are Megavli literally means to mix dough. The Kohanim are not mixing the dough. They're going to people's houses and collecting what? Challah. They're collecting the challah from people who are making dough. Now this is part of the job of Kohanim. They have to go and collect the challah. They shouldn't just wait till people brought it to them, to make sure that people were taking challah off the dough. Okay? So when the Kohanim are going, they shouldn't avoid the chatzeros of people who are suspect to eat shvius, but they can even go to them and make sure they take off challah. Some say that we are medaktik. We have to avoid them. He who says you are medaktik because maybe their challah comes to Shemitah. Who says you don't discriminate. Amazing svara, Rabbi say. Look at this. This is another mind-boggling svara. This is much more mind-boggling than before. It says Yerushalmi. Mavricho min hakala. If you don't take his kala, then you're going to distance him from a light aveira of Shemitah. You're going to distance yourself from a light aveira of Shemitah. Umachnisa, but you're going to put him into a more severe aveira of what? Of tevel. Because dough which challah has not been taken off in Eretz Yisrael is tevel. So there, tevel, it should be be'avon. Take out the vav. Be'avon misa is a capital crime. Shemitah below say is a lav. So therefore, you have to go to his house. Now, this is amazing. The Bavli argues on this explicitly, not in this case. But the Gemara B'Yim Shabbos says, "Ein omrim la'adam chatei b'shul sheyizka chavercha." Right? Here we're telling the Kohen, you should engage yourself in a potential sin of Shemitah. It's possible he will sin in order to save that guy who's a chashud on Shemitah from transgressing the much more severe avera of tevel, of eating unchalad dough. Okay? So almost the antithesis of the Beis Shammai we saw before, right? Because you should even transgress an avera, a lighter one, in order to avoid the Tamoros transgressing the heavier one. Okay? Says Yerushalmi further, so what should you do? L'maisa, you don't want to transgress an avera either, so what do you do? So it says more Ketzar Uose. Rabbi Chuna said, maybe Kohen Chashud. Here we go back to Beis Shammai's morality again. Ready? When you go to collect challah from this guy who doesn't keep Shemitah, you bring a Kohen who doesn't keep Shemitah. You don't like that, do you? Okay. Rabbi Chuda, maybe Kohen Chashud, and it should umachilo lo, and the matbila should be taken out. When you give it to him, so it says, whoa. But not for the same. Gemara didn't say whoa for the same reason you would say whoa. It says, Rav Lonin Tzam Meiser Taras Lamoritz. How can you bring a Kohen who's chashud and give him the challah? Might be tamei. It's going to be tamei the challah. In other words, we don't care he's eating the shmita. Forget about that. But it's going to be with tamei the challah. Because the challah is going to be with tamei here. So it says the Gemara.
Anyway, he doesn't care if it's the man that's making the challah doesn't care if it's tummy or not.
That may be, but Lamaisa says we'll deal with that in a second. Ramana said maybe Kohen Chashud. You bring the Kohen who's suspect on Shemitah, Umadbila, and you take him to the mikveh. Umeshamra Ada Erev, and then you watch the challah till nightfall because it's fully on Mazasa to eat challah. And Machil, you give him the Savik Shemitah Challah at night. In other words, basically what we're saying is that if you eat a questionable, if you eat a questionable hechsher, I'm allowed to give it to you. That's what it comes out from this, right? So Kohen Chashud can take the Shmiras Chashud here. Okay? And Adarab, I encourage you to do that. Says the Gemara, Machil, then you give it to him. So no, wait a minute. How can you do this whole thing? Okay, party's over. We thought the Yerushalmi held that way, but the Yerushalmi itself says, let's get real. Okay? How can you aid and abet a Kohen Chashud to eat Shemitah fruit? So it says, Mar, you're right. We're just playing games for now. Rabbi Shimon Bar Sani, B'Shem Rav Acha said, Mishamar Erev Pesach V'Sorfa. You go take the challah from the Chashud on Shemitah. You don't eat it. You don't give it to Kohen who's Chashud to eat it. You keep it till Erev Pesach and then you burn it. Why don't you burn it right away? Because people will get a misimpression. They'll say you can burn challah and that's not true, right? So rather you burn it on Erev Pesach. Okay? New Mishnah. This is not the end of the funny svaras for tonight. Okay? Harotza lachsom ala yerek lo kami maso. You're carrying. We're just going to get to halacha gimel, then we'll stop. Okay? Harotza lachsom ala yerek. You're carrying a heavy load of vegetables. Let's say lettuce, and you want to take out the outer leaves. Lo kami maso to make your load lighter. Lo yashli chachiyas. You're not allowed to throw them down until you mitre them. Okay? Why? Because somebody might find them and eat them. Now this is a very interesting halacha. A very interesting choshen mishpah halacha. If you're taking vegetables from the marketplace, you go to the shuk and you pick it up. And you decide to put it back. You don't have to put it back until you meiser it.
You pick it up, you meiser it?
You pick it up, you bought it, you have to meiser it. Even though you didn't pay it. You did akbar on it, you got to meiser it. It became yours.
Even though you had no intention?
That's the Gemara's going to deal with it. Sheino, now I think there's a typo in my edition. I think the next word should be mechusar. Do you have mechusar? Sheino mechusar aluminium? Okay, I also have Sheino Meiser. But really what it means is Sheino mechusar aluminium. It really is yours, except that you haven't counted as much, you haven't counted them and paid for them. But the moment you pick it up, it's yours. Because according to our halacha, Mashiach Koina, you acquired it when you picked it up, right? Even though you haven't counted and paid for it yet.
Even without das.
Well, what does das mean? You picked it up. That's enough das.
See if there's any...
That we'll talk about. If he's standing there and checking it out, and then he sees a nicer batch, Mutter lachzir. In that case, he's allowed to drop it. Because he didn't do Mashiach. Okay? Rabbi Eliezer said to Rabbi Meir. This is going like Rabbi Meir. How so? To Rabbi Meir Omar lo itir limkor d'mai el osito milvad. Because the Rabbi Meir is the one who said the only time you're allowed to sell d'mai is if you're a wholesaler. So therefore, even if you're not even allowed to drop a cabbage of d'mai on the ground. Okay? You have to meiser before you drop it in the ground. Rabbi Yochanan said, Divrei HaKoli. This is going to everybody. Shanyoi. And here it's different. Now, it should be read differently than it appears in your Gemara. The Gross Gear says, mafkir begasa, veina zoche begasa. When you make it hefker, you make it hefker in large amounts. You want to lighten your load. You put large amounts on the ground. So you're like a wholesaler. You should be exempt. Except according to Meir. Meir says only the sito and only the actual seller by wholesale is exempt from the money. But here, the Chorah should be exempt, even if we don't know the Meir, you should be exempt anyway, because you're dropping large amounts on the ground for free. You have no profit margin. So for sure, it should be exempt from the money like a moicher begasa. Why aren't you? Says more because here it's different. Because the guy who picks them up leaf by leaf. And a zoiche begasa. The guy who's zoiche in a hefker is going to be zoiche bedako, piece by piece, as if he's buying retail. So therefore, for him, you have to meiser it before you drop it. Okay? So we're actually comparing this to the wholesale retail case. We're saying since the buyer is retail, even though you the dropper are wholesale, you have to meiser it before you drop it. Okay?
You assume that an ani is going to pick up.
Never assume. You're right. Were you able to know that? No, then you'd be in good shape, but it's not necessarily true. Okay? V'leisa da polygar meir. Wait a minute. No, this is a very lumdish Gemara. Doesn't the Saigar Meir? The Rabbi Meir Amar came and showed the mafkir davar v'yoytze meirushusa hefker or hefker. So once you're mafkir begasa. What do I care if later on there's zoicha bedaka? Now that you're mafkir, it's your mafkir begasa should be exempt. Shani, there it's different. Shah zoicha bedaka. The guy picks up zoicha bedaka ve'ein. A mafkir begasa, and the mafkir is not being mafkir gasa. Now here the Yerushalmi says it's different Metzias from what I told you before. You thought the Metzias says he drops large amounts of lettuce. No, he drops as it gets heavy. He drops one leaf there and one leaf there, and the guy picks up one leaf here and one leaf there. So therefore, it's dak on both sides. The dropper drops one by one, and the picker-up picks up one by one. So if it's all dak on both sides, that's why you have to meiser its mine. Okay? That's what the Gemara answers. Says the Gemara, "Fa'afil Rabbi Yossi leisa polik." And you should know there's not even arguing Rabbi Yossi. The Rabbi Yossi Amar ena hefka yotzi mitachas yidei bailim el b'schiyah. This is a cool question. I mean, this is an A for creativity. You might think that, according to Rabbi Yossi, this is Rabbi Yossi in the Dorim. He says, if I make something hefker, it's a well-known sheet of Rabbi Yossi, it doesn't become hefker right away. I don't lose ownership right away. When do I lose ownership? When the other person makes the kinyan. So it says, the Gemara, there's a problem going around. According to Rabbi Yossi, should be exempt from the Ma'ir. Because by the time he picks it up, it's already gasa. Because by the time it's as you're dropping it, it's still yours. When it's become ois yours, when somebody else starts picking up, by that time you drop so many pieces that it becomes gasa. If hefker is hefker right away when you drop it, so then you drop daka, then it's partially should be mechayiv you. But if hefker only becomes hefker when the other guy picks it up, which is let's say an hour or two later, by that time you should be considered to have dropped enough pieces of lettuce to be considered to be a gasa guy. So why do you have to take off meiser, right? Again, you should know the Rabbi Yossi. The Rabbi Yossi Yad Bailim El B'Schia ain't Hefker or Hefker. So you might say it's not Hefker. Until Sarei comes Gasa, right? Shani here it's different. Now here to the Gra changes the gear. So Shazoiche Zoiche Bedaka, Feina Mafkir Begasa. The Zoiche. Since when the Zoiche picks it up, he picks it up leaf by leaf. And that's when it becomes Hefker. So therefore, your Hefker is also Daka. It's true you dropped a large pile of leaves by the time the Zoiche starts picking up. But he picks them up one by one. So when he picks up the one, then he's Zoiche from you. When he picks up the next one, he's Zoiche the next one from you. So it's really Daka on both sides, even according to Rabbi Yossi, because it's his Daka which defines how your Hefker works. It's a very Lamdisher Gemara. Okay? Chizkiya says, this is a new period, new issue, period. Chizkiya said, Ein, and the next word should be taken out. The next word, Hefker, is taken out. Ein mechusar lebailim, ela b'schia. He takes out the word b'schia as well. So, Ein mechusar lebailim, ela minyan. Now, this is amazing Gemara. This is going back in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Chizkiah says, when he picked up the lettuce in the marketplace, right, from the stand, it becomes yours. Because what are you missing? You're only missing counting to know how much to pay. The Mashiach is already yours, right? Ready made it yours. Ketzaruosa, what do? You have to take off. Noito min elyon u'masakin. You take some of the top leaves in your masakin. Now let's make that graphic. This is the lettuce, right? I picked up the lettuce, look at it. Looks like a nice lettuce, picked it up, and say, I don't want it. But I already picked it up. So what do I have to do before I put it down? The meiser. I take off the leaf, and that's the meiser. And this I take home with me. What's the obvious question? You didn't pay for it. Right? Isn't this theft? So this is amazing Gemara about to learn. It's only half a minute, which is too bad. But so he says, Kada, Rabbi Shimon Bar Kada, it's like the following case. I want you to know this is mind-boggling. I don't know if I can prepare you sufficiently for this. Rabbi Shimon Bar Kahana have a masmich Rabbi Lezer. Shimon Bar Kahana was supporting Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer was an ancient old sage, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Kahana was holding on. Over al Chad Keren, to pass by a certain vineyard. Amar Lei, Rabbi Shimon Bar Kahana said, "I see Chad Kisam, bring me a toothpick, machta sheni, to pick my teeth." Chazav Amar Lei, then Rabbi say from the vineyard. So he turned around, changed his mind, Rabbi Lezer. Chazav Amar Lei said, "You know what? Lo teisli klum, don't bring me anything." Why? Omar, why not? Not because of theft. Because that I say if you bring me, kol barnashu barnash mebarke. Everybody's going to do that, and by the time we get finished, ha'azel saiga the guvra. By the time we finish, a whole bucket, a whole large trunk of a tree will be gone. Now says the Gemara understands this. Rabbi Lezer wasn't afraid of gezel. He wasn't afraid of theft. He was afraid for himself. He was afraid of setting an example. Other people come and do it and be too much.
The heads will be shriveled. The heads are laid.
Well, there's toothpicks. This is toothpicks.
No, but in the market.
Right. But the point is, it says the Gemara is trying to, the answer the Gemara is giving here, that's if you follow through with Rabbi Lezer's marshal. But the Gemara really means to give an answer with this. The Gemara means to give an answer that really you're allowed to take one toothpick, it's not gezel. Why? Since there's no loss to the owner with one toothpick. So too, they used to sell lettuce by head. You go to they still do. You go to Dominic's. If the lettuce is missing one leaf, you pay less. You pay the same thing, right? But lettuce, they don't. They pay by the head. By lettuce, you always pay by the head. Cabbage, sometimes you pay by the head. Lettuce is always by the head. So if that's the case, there's no theft. Because you're not being mechaser in anything. No.
less product.
Doesn't matter. He doesn't make less money on it. That's what the Gemara is saying.
He doesn't know it.
If you take something from him which doesn't diminish his value, according to the Havamina, it's not gezel. It's not even considered gezel. Pachad mishav pruta. He didn't lose anything as a result. It's a mind-boggling concept.
So the ultimate buyer is losing.
What?
Ultimate
The buyer's losing, but what do I care? He doesn't own it yet.
No, the ultimate buyer.
Yeah, I know. So what? Shama says, so what?
Eventual buyer. What about the concept of the toothpicks keeping,
So that's like a Xera, but that's not the Ikra Din. So you're right. Maybe if we said everybody would come and take a leaf of lettuce, that might be true. But he didn't think that by lettuce is such a chashash. Right? So that would be okay. Now, truth is, the Gemara rejects this. Gemara rejects this one. Rabbi Chag, I have a mismach Rabbi Zira because there's another Meiser. Rabbi Chag was holding Rabbi Zira. A different generation, next generation. Avar Chad Ton. They passed by a certain individual who was carrying Chad Mechel de Kisin. Because a certain person was holding a whole container full of toothpicks. Amalei, so he said, "Aisli Chad Kisin. Bring me one toothpick. Machzid in order that I should pick my teeth." Chosam later Rabbi Zira changed his mind, said, "Lo tesili klum. Don't bring me anything." Then I say, if you bring me, kol barnash barnash mevakin, everybody will do that. Or zilna michel guva, and a whole large barrel of toothpicks will be missing. Says the Gemara that Rabbi Zera himself said, "Lo Rabbi Zera kosher kolkach." And it's not that I'm such a kosher person. In other words, it's not that I'm a holy roller. And I'm very machmir on myself. No. Elamilan diyaitz and shemalon, navdinan. The words of God we have heard and we shall do. In other words, now the Gemara interprets that to mean it's mamish gezel. Even to be gezel, something which has no value to owner, is gezel. To take one toothpick, even though it's not going to diminish the value of the barrel, is gezel. So before we understood that it's not gezel to do this from Rabbi Lazar, because Rabbi Lazar just reneged on taking the toothpick because he was afraid of setting a bad example. But here from Rabbi Zira's statement of that I'm doing the listening to the word of God, we see it as mamish gezel, right? That Rabbi Zira at least held it's mamish gezel. So now the kasha comes back. How can you be meiser the lettuce? It's all his lettuce. You can't be meiser it, right?
So why can't
So say, what answer can we give?
that this gezel
It's more focused like a Beinadam Lamokum type of
What?
focus. This gezel then,
Why can't it be by the
it's like a Beinadam.
It is a ben adam lomokum.
But it's the focus is solely the Beinadam Lamokum.
That's what he's focusing on.
Yes. Because if
I don't know, Mr. the other guy wouldn't have minded him taking one toothpick.
it's not sure fruit.
No, it's not charpruta. For sure, it's much less than a pruta. But you're right. It is focusing on the model makom aspect. I'm not sure why they didn't focus on the l'chaber. I don't know. But it's not to remain our issue today.
No, I'm just saying it's
you normally think of gezel as being the problem with it is that somebody's losing. Somebody's not losing.
Again?
You think of somebody of gezel being a loss to somebody. That's what makes it problematic.
Yes.
So you're saying no, it doesn't make a difference when there's a loss to
when
somebody.
you break it
All
up,
we care
you
is
sort of lose
that
you
you were
remember.
that there's halacha of not
Break
taking
it
it.
up. I think you gotta learn
Is it taking it a loss?
Yeah, we're looking at just purely from a straight legalistic.
I just think it's weird.
We're looking at it from a legalistic perspective, not from the actual human factor. That's true. All right. Says Gemara, Rav B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan said, "Came and Shemashach." Kana. What's his name, Rabbi Yochanan? You look at this wrong. Once he's picked it up, he's koined. It's his. He has to take off. It's not that he's taking off from the Bailam and making them lose. It's his. Lo yachaser. What was missing at that point? Lo yachaser ella mimani le. He's only missing an account to pay. So therefore, Ketzur also, what does he do? No say to me achas me'em. He's got to pay. Itaka pays for it. Umisakin and fixes it. So in a chanami, he bought it. It's not that you're taking away his stuff. You paid for that lettuce. Now, the Gemara asks a very interesting technical question. That's fine. Okay, so you solve your problem. So loading tzosa takola boy machrov. Aren't you making it problem for people who come afterwards? Because now you took one from the pile and you made it okay. But all the rest of them are Demai. So now a next buyer will come along, a chaver, and he'll want to buy, he'll still know, oh, all of the fruit on this stand is Demai. I have to take Meiser off of it if I buy it. He might happen to Meiser the Demai from the one which you have to take Meiser from already. Which is no good, because it can't do double service, right? So therefore, you're going to mess up the next guy. Says Marosa so tzibur lefanov. He makes it a separate pile, whatever you Meiser. Yeah, I understand. V'yikvos tov peirosov. And that's the Gemara. Wait a minute. Why can't you just put it back? V'yikvos tov peirosov kasha. Put it back. V'lo kein tani. Didn't we learn kaver da ma'isosov shel kaver tov peirosov? Didn't we learn that we're not afraid of causing the next person a problem? This is a case where you sold somebody fruit and forgot to take mitzvahs off of it before you sold it. So you can mitzvah his fruit in your house, even though later on that might cause a takola, that he might use the fruit which he bought from you and use it as mitzvah somewhere else, not realizing that you had already mitzvah it in your house, right? Unbeknownst to him. So the Chor we see we're not choshesh takola. Vafilos takola b'olei machrov. Rabbi China said tiktu v'lokeach. That's true where he bought it from you and went away. So you have two evils. One of them is not to do anything. One of them is to do something, even though there might be a takola down the line. So there we do the lesser of two evils. What's the lesser of two evils? That you should fix it up here from a distance, despite the fact that you run the risk that later on he might try and use it for some other purpose. That's the lesser of two evils in that case. However, by Machzir, in our case over here, we didn't allow you to create a potential takola later on. That's why when you picked it up and you have to take a meiser off of it, when you put it back down, you have to put it down in a separate pile. So people know that this one is already meiser. Okay? Kini masnisin, and this is the way to read the rest of our Mishnah. Haya omedu birer. If you were standing and you were picking up, not in order because you wanted to buy it. This is what you may clarify before. The Mishnah really means this. You were standing there and you picked it up not in order to buy it because you were checking it out. Then you found one different one you took, and you're allowed to put it back down even without meisering it. Ad kedumbo samin. You might think that's only when you were picking up lettuce, you saw better lettuce, and you put the first lettuce down. No. Afilu minache. Even if you picked up lettuce, you saw a tomato, and you put down the lettuce and picked up the tomato, you're still exempt from taking meisers off the first lettuce, because when you picked it up, you didn't pick it up with the intent of acquiring it, you picked it up only with the intent of examining it. Okay, we'll stop here for this evening.